Hello and welcome back! As some sort of parting gift from the summer, I managed to attend 2 anime, manga and comic book related conventions recently. It was fortunate because my line of work does not align with free weekends, but this time I could visit both events. The first one was held in the second largest city in the country, Debrecen. Due to its relative closeness to the Romanian and Ukrainian borders, events here usually have a rather small, friendly, familiar atmosphere because not many can take the trip across the country to attend. For me, it's only about 90 minutes by train, which is a comfortable distance. The weather was rather nice, and my old friends from high school and college times gathered around to attend together. It was called MifeCon, and it was organized in a local community center in a suburban area of Debrecen. I always like to go to Debrecen to cons like this because I grew tired of overcrowded, busy events in Budapest where you often have to wait hours in the line, you can barely move around inside the venues, and all the artist and merchant tables are constantly occupied, so you cannot check what they have to offer. Here in Debrecen it's always more relaxed, the staff is super nice and helpful, and they genuinely seem to be happy that you make your way to attend their event. This was the main location of the con, a small hall with a stage where various programs took place. The artist alley and a few merch shops were positioned on both sides of the hall. You could buy Western comic books, manga, novels, figures and other small gifts. There was a 3D printing station where people could watch the process and even request and buy prints, and in one of the corners you could even try VR gaming too. It was wild, I tell you. I was so dizzy after a couple of minutes. On the first floor, there were several smaller rooms for Dance Dance Revolution, other gaming console opportunities, origami, Japanese chess called shogi, which I tried as well. The main attraction for me was a roundtable discussion for various topics: Harry Potter, Star Wars, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I even bought a Marvel comic book collection of Black Widow comic stories, which is a nice loot. The second event, the Fantasy Expo, was held in Budapest a week later. I took a pretty early train, but I still couldn't arrive early enough, as the line already was hundreds of meters long. I never even imagined this being this popular among the fans. We have all sorts of anime and geek conventions, but fantasy never struck me as something that attracts such a crowd. Well, turns out the event was, as so many conventions recently, completely hijacked by other topics, mainly cosplay though. Apart from a very small segment, there was barely anything fantasy related. After standing in the line for almost 100 minutes, I finally managed to enter the building. There was one program I definitely wanted to attend. That was a special performance of a newly formed belly dance group. They were dressed in elvish style dresses with pointy ears and everything, and they tried to perform a belly dance with the gracefulness of elves. After the group's performance, their lead dancer also gave a solo dance. Unfortunately, their songs are copyrighted, so I cannot play them or my video would get struck. So I just substituted it with a tune from YouTube's own audio library. This venue has organized a couple of conventions already, and every time I get back here, I see that the crowd is bigger and bigger, and in my opinion, it has already outgrown the building. The corridors, like here at the Artist Alley, are tight and crowded. They don't really have a good place for collectibles or craftsmanship exhibitions. In the main hall with the main stage, you could barely even move around, because next to all the seats taken for the cosplay event, people were even sitting on the floor too, and the air ventilation was terrible. There were some amazing Lord of the Rings items showcased in a room that functioned basically as a connecting corridor where people were coming and going constantly, and you couldn't really appreciate it relaxed. The so-called market takes place in a gym. You can see the basketball hoops on the wall, and it's also very tiny for this many people. An old acquaintance of mine, Mimi, whom I have known because we are from the same city, had a gallery showcase from her recent artworks, which was also on one of the busy corridors, totally not in a place it deserves. Back in the day, in the early 2000s, we organized an anime fan club in our hometown with many other friends. She's a very talented artist and cosplayer, and you can see her drawings here. The courtyard had several opportunities to have lunch or to grab a drink, which was very necessary after a couple of hours before the final rush. There was a Budapest Comic-Con venue announcement later, where I want to go next year, and I entered a lucky draw where I won a 50% discount from the ticket price, so I guess that's nice. Then came of course the cosplay, which was long and mostly cringy. I don't know, maybe I'm just too old for this and I can't really appreciate it. Then came a roundtable discussion about the Barbenheimer phenomenon in terms of anime shows, if there was something like that in the anime scene before or nowadays, and how that played out. That was followed by an interesting presentation about the history of the Chinese animation. Soon after this, I set off though, because another important event was starting, DJ Bobo's concert in Budapest. As a child, I always wanted to attend one of his concerts, as they were such a spectacle, and now my dream finally came true. I had to stand in the line again for about an hour before we were let into Budapest Park, the concert venue, and fortunately I was able to get really close to the stage and see him and his crew from the close-up. I had an amazing time. The crowd really loved him. He was very gracious and humble and not a single minute late. It definitely was a memory I will cherish for a lifetime. Thank you for coming along and stay tuned for the next video.